Hello there folks, and welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash and I am your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. And today I'm going to do a product review, a watch review in fact, a watch which I've been waiting to get my hands on for quite some time, and it is a very classy watch. I think you'll agree when we get to the end of the review. So let's get talking. It is the Rolex Explorer, the latest 2021 model, released in March of last year. So to have a look at this piece, let me give you some of the statistics to start with, and then we will talk about my observations as an owner. So come in, have a look, and let me show you what we've got. Okay, so here we are, a simple and elegant watch to look at, 36mm in size as its build. However, the watch is actually closer to 35mm, so it's actually a bit smaller than it is indicated in most of the Rolex material. Inside this watch, its beating heart is the 3230 movement, a stalwart machine within the Rolex catalogue. It powers a number of their watches in different iterations. It's solid, it's dependable. It's a certified chronometer, which means it is guaranteed to plus or minus 2 seconds per day. It gives us a 70-hour power reserve, which is really great if you don't wear your watch every single day. It's nice to know you can put it down and it'll be ticking away when you pick it up. Now, this particular model is made of 100% oyster steel, which is Rolex version of stainless steel in essence. Of course, this watch is famously available in two-tone as well, with yellow gold, but I like the classic, so I went for full stainless steel, making this quite a robust and solid little piece. The bracelet is the oyster bracelet, all entirely brushed finish, so there's not much shine going on here, there's not much bling other than the bezel and the flanks of the watch. That oyster bracelet is very solid. I mean, all of the Rolex bracelets in the modern era are fantastic. You'll struggle to find a better bracelet on any watch, and the same goes for this Rolex Explorer. It's a relatively small bracelet though, because the lugs here start at 19 and they taper down to 14mm. So actually quite a strong taper on the watch, but still it feels really robust. The clasp itself, the oyster clasp, simple, got the safety keeper there, which you'd expect to see on one of the professional range watches. It's got the Easy Link attachment as well, which means you get an extra 5mm of allowable size within the watch. You can click it open and you get that extra bit of size. The dial itself is a glossy black, which is lustrous, it's beautiful, it's deep, and when you look into it, you know, it's got an inky blackness to it. The hour markers are defined for us by a triangle at the 12 o'clock, an inverted triangle, and then baton markers other than at the 3, the 6 and the 9, where the indicators are in Arabic numerals. A simple three-hander in essence, hours, minutes and seconds. Some would argue that is all you need on a watch, but that is certainly all you get here. As I say, 100 meters of water resistance, a screw-down crown, making this a robust and tough little number. So what attracted me to this Rolex Explorer as my latest acquisition? And in fact, this is the 5th Rolex which I've purchased for my collection. I've gone on the classical journey. I bought a Datejust, I've got a Submariner, I've got a couple of GMT Masters, and the Explorer was the last watch which I purchased, and I have to say it is my intention to make this my last Rolex for quite some time, because I feel I've bottomed out with this brand. Why was I attracted to the Explorer with that in mind? With the sense that I'm all Rolexed out? What really saw me coming back for one more piece? Well, a number of things. The Explorer is a very simple watch. It's a three-hander, doesn't do anything, just tells you the time. But it tells that time in a very elegant and simple way. Some might say it's a very austere watch. You know, it does the very minimum that you would expect a watch to do. But that is perhaps what attracts me the most. There's no superfluous gadgetry here. There's no bling on this piece. It is as simple as a watch that you would hope to find. And because of that, it is classically elegant. I know myself as a sort of stylish man, I am often drawn to simplicity. because simplicity often provides us the best direction between A to B, whether it's in a suit, a simple two-buttoned, single-breasted suit, whether it's a pair of shoes. The black cap-toe Oxford is as simple as you will find a man's shoe, but it remains the classically elegant shoe every man must own. And perhaps within the watch world, this little Explorer did that for me. It is stylish. It is without unnecessary ostentation. It is simple. And again, because of that, it makes it very versatile as a timepiece. It's a watch easily at home when you're wearing your swim shorts on holiday. You can jump in the pool with this all day long, no problem. It's a professional range Rolex. It's designed to be robust. At the same time, when you climb out of the pool, you can put on a suit in the evening, go to the restaurant with your friends and have a wonderful meal in a high-end establishment, and this watch will tick that box too. That simplicity means versatility, as is so often the case within men's style. Now, this watch has been around a long time, since 1953. And why is it that this was the last Rolex I purchased? Well, the answer to that is simple. Up until March 2021, this watch was available only in the 39mm size. Of course, originally it was introduced as a 36mm, as it is today. But in 2010, Rolex sort of succumbed to that trend we see in men's watches, and they upsized the Explorer. They made the watch 39mm. They added 3mm. And a few years ago, probably 3, maybe 4 years ago, I walked into a jeweller's and they had Rolex Explorers on display. How things have changed, eh? If only that was the case today. And I walked in there and I tried it on, the 39mm. And I looked down at my wrist and it just didn't look proportional. There seemed to be too much empty dial for me. Not enough sort of going on there to make that watch proportionally perfect for me. And I was quite happy to take it off and leave it in the window and think, do you know what? That is not a watch that floats my boat. I'm walking away from the Explorer. But when I saw that Rolex had downsized it in 2021, I knew immediately that was a watch which would work for my physical proportions and my sense of style when I look at the piece as well. It just worked. Okay, so let's very briefly talk about the history of the Explorer, because as in so many things, when I buy a new item, I like to revel in its heritage, its origin story, because if I understand more about where the pieces come from, I can enjoy it more, I can wear it with more confidence. And with the Explorer, if you look at any of the marketing material, I've got a Rolex brochure here actually, look at any of Rolex's market material, and they lean very heavily into this supposed relationship with the 1953 conquest of Everest by Sir Edmund Hillary and Sherpa Tenzing Norgay. And they will make reference to this watch repeatedly in the material on their website. It's pictured in the brochure, and you would imagine, if you looked at this material, that this was the watch on the wrist of those two men who were the first to the very highest point on Earth. But actually that's not the case at all. Rolex are very keen to tell us that perhaps those two explorers had on their wrist the forerunner of this watch, an Oyster Perpetual of some kind, which morphed into the Explorer. But they like to spin us that legend, don't they? That the watch is irrevocably linked with that magnificent human achievement, the conquest of Everest. And that is why they sell it in such a way, as so many of their watches have these relationships with fantastic human achievements, as if it makes any difference to most watch buyers. To me, it actually does. In fact, I find it somewhat unpalatable that they constantly lean into this story of Everest when absolutely it was not on the wrist of Edmund Hillary or Tenzing Norgay. But there we go, that's the route they've taken. It's immaterial to me. I like to know its history. The important thing is this watch came out in 1953, and since that time, even that very first watch would be identifiable to this latest 2021 version. They haven't strayed very far from those original design concepts. So what role does the Explorer fulfill within the Rolex catalogue? Well, its name kind of gives it away. As we know, Rolex like to be associated with human achievement, expeditions and things like that. And the Explorer is essentially Rolex's field watch. A very expensive field watch, but a simple field watch. A time-only watch, which is relatively small, easy to read, robust when on the wrist, but again, simple and elegant. As I say, it has an austerity to it. It doesn't do a great deal. It's relatively small. It's relatively unnoticed when on the wrist, and that is the role that it fulfills. Now, the Rolex Explorer has had some very important owners over the years, people at the very top of their game. Two that have particular resonance for me are Sir David Attenborough, the veteran natural scientist who of course is famous for making television programmes around the natural world. In his earlier life, he was most certainly somebody who embarked upon expeditions around the world in those early days of still discovering species in the far-flung parts of the world. And he wore a Rolex Explorer during his expeditions, which really adds credence to the strength of character of this watch. And when it comes to style and practicality, another very famous owner is Ian Fleming, of course the author who created the most famous of stylish men, James Bond. Now, it's known that Fleming actually graced his wrist with a Rolex Explorer. He's pictured in pretty much every publicly available image of him wearing an Explorer. So certainly he loved the watch. And in fact, when he wrote the Bond novels, he based very much of Bond's characteristics and attributes on his own experience. He was a commander in British intelligence during the Second World War. James Bond is a commander in British intelligence, and many of the associations follow. The tailors he went to, the clubs he frequented. This was Ian Fleming, but in personification. So we can hypothesize, and many people have, that when Fleming writes about Bond's watch, he only ever refers to it, I believe, as a Rolex. He never names the model. Many people have, surmised that it was a Submariner, because they think that, we saw Sean Connery wearing a Submariner in the very early Bond films. We know that Fleming was on set acting as an advisor. Perhaps he advised that Connery should wear a Submariner. But the truth is, it's most likely when he wrote the literary Bond, he had the Rolex Explorer in mind. So some might say the Rolex Explorer is the original, the only Bond watch. So in an era where it is increasingly difficult to get your hands on a stainless steel Rolex watch, how did I get this one? Well, quite straightforwardly. As soon as I saw this watch was released, within a week, couple of weeks or so, I'd made my way to a couple of the jewelers which I have a relationship with. And I went into the stores, I said I was interested in the watch. They'd only just been announced. The pieces had yet to even find their way into the United Kingdom, but I wanted to be one of the first people on the list. And I certainly was. I put my name down in the jewellery stores that I've previously bought watches from. Now, it's important to say that is not just one authorised dealer. I actually visited 4 authorised dealers, all separate entities, right? So you should never ever go to different branches of the same authorised dealer. So in the UK, the biggest game player is Watches of Switzerland. They own a whole range of different jewellery stores operating under different names. It's not worth going into more than one branch of the same large entity and putting your name down. What you must do, put your name down. Yes, I went to Watches of Switzerland. Yes, I went to private jewellery stores that just had one single branch. Yes, of course, I went to smaller jewellery chains that I know only have 3 or 4 branches. Entirely separate entities. All I'm doing there is hedging my bets. As soon as my watch was delivered, I contacted the other jewellers and told them I no longer require that order to be fulfilled. Spread your bets, you have more chance of getting the call. I waited 8 months for this watch. This watch entered my life through Watches of Switzerland. So the largest Rolex provider in the United Kingdom, they provided this watch for me, retail price of course, from an authorised dealer in a city not far from where I live. So what's the fuss all about with the Explorer then? Why do people like this one? Well, I think it's a very simple watch, and that may be its attraction to so many people. Yes, it is, of course, a stainless steel professional range Rolex watch, which are exceptionally on trend over the last 5 years. Everybody wants to get one. There's this sort of clamour to get any professional stainless steel watch. In fact, in the Rolex world, even the two-tones are disappearing now. Such is the desire to own, a watch with that famous crown on it. But the Explorer has got a few things going for it at the moment. Yes, it's a brand new watch. It's just been revamped. That new 36mm size means that it attracts many people who might have been put off by that larger size. Of course, equally, it will repel people who don't like smaller watches. But it's just out there, so all of the people like me who didn't like the 39mm are heading towards this lovely little 36mm piece. The other thing I would say is that easy wearability. It's a watch which, as I said, can be worn across the widest spectrum of your clothing. So, if you only want to own one watch, you don't want to have a collection, this might be a very sensible choice, because you've got a watch you can wear out in the woods, you can wear on holiday when you're going in the sea or going in the pool. 100-meter water resistance with a screw-down crown. This is a tough little puppy. You can do anything with this. However, you put your £500 suit on and this watch feels equally at home. It is inobtrusive. It doesn't scream out, look at me, I'm a Rolex. This watch absolutely flies under the radar, and it's a watch you can feel comfortable wearing anywhere. If you're concerned about people might look at you and think, well, there's a guy who's showing off. He's got a rollie on and he's flexing it, he's showing it around. This watch, that's never going to do that. It's always going to be discreet, and that is really attractive for me. In fact, I really like discretion in the accessories that I wear. I like quality, but I also like the fact that it doesn't jump up and down and wave a flag screaming, look at me. The gold two-tone version of this certainly might not tick that box. That is a little bit more ostentatious, flamboyant, but the stainless steel model, definitely very discreet. Okay then, so let's put the watch back on. Such a lovely piece it is, it has to be worn as much as possible. And it is a very elegant, lovely little fit. Effortless to wear, that's the beauty of it. But all watches, I don't care how expensive, how fancy they are, they've all got pros and cons, and this watch is no different. Let me tell you about the pros that I think so far. Now, my first pro is that it is simple and it is understated. It's not a watch which is going to be noticed. You're not going to be followed down the street by muggers. You're not going to have people saying, oh, look at that chap over there flexing his watch. It goes absolutely under the radar, and that's certainly a plus point for me. The next plus point for me is its size. It is nice and small, easily worn. It disappears on the wrist. That is not to say that it is a small and flimsy watch. Absolutely not. This is a watch which is robust. It's not light. You know you're wearing a quality, solid wristwatch. But because of the reduced size, 36mm, it doesn't wear like a dinner plate on your wrist. So it's nice. And again, I'm using the word repeatedly, discreet. It works perfectly. The last thing I would say is a pro is this may be the only watch that you ever need. If you were to buy this watch today, you could own it for the rest of your life. We know Rolex, they're solid enough to last 100 years. You need never have another one, because this watch will cover you for informal, casual, formal, and everything in between. People often use the expression, this could be a one-watch collection. I absolutely agree with that. It certainly could be. Now, I've got a few cons as well, because, this watch is far from perfect. The first con is actually the first thing that I said was a pro, and that is, it is simple and it is understated. Now, if you're somebody who saved up your entire life and you think to yourself, I want a Rolex, this is my ultimate dream watch, buying a watch which is simple and understated might not be the way to go, because you could wear this watch for a lifetime and nobody's going to know that you're wearing a Rolex. It entirely depends on your motivation for buying a Rolex watch. All right, if you want it because you want a classic, elegant, robust, solidly accurate and perfectly capable watch, and you don't care if anybody sees it on your wrist, this might be the way to go. However, if you're somebody who wants to show off to the world, to demonstrate your success in life, and to do that you wear a Rolex so that people can see the physical embodiment of your achievement, this isn't the way to go, because nobody is going to notice. Now, the other thing I would say could be a con, it's not for me, but it might be for you, is the size. It's the elephant in the room with this little piece. It's a little piece, all right? It's 36 millimeters, as stated in the catalogue, but you know what? It's actually much closer to 35 millimeters. This isn't a giant watch at all. When I often wear 40 millimeter watches, Submariner or a GMT. When I take that off and I put this baby on, this disappears on the wrist. It feels rather small. It is not a big hulking watch. So if you're a really large man, you might find this a little bit too small for your wrist. It is definitely worth trying it on before making a decision, because, it's subjective. It'll be dependent upon you. Do you know what? When I first purchased this watch, I did a video on it explaining my buying experience. You will be amazed how many negative comments I received under that video where people said, go out and buy yourself a man's watch. 36 millimeters is for ladies and things like that. And there was a remarkable number of those. The fact is, the size watch you own should be directly related to the size of human being that you are, all right? I am 5'9". I am of medium stature, all right, at best, right? I'm not a big man, so wearing a 42 millimeter watch is too big for me. It dwarfs my wrist and I don't enjoy it. It's not a pleasant wearing experience. The size of your watch is not relevant to your manhood, all right? It is actually relevant to the size of your wrist. So if you're somebody who likes a smaller watch, if you were to look a generation or so back, you will find all of the classic movie stars were wearing 34, 35, 36 millimeter watches. This current trend towards ever bigger pieces is modern. It's something which is a current trend. Yes, human beings are getting bigger, probably, as we have better diets and, our size enlarges. But that doesn't mean to say your wristwatch has to get bigger either. So have a think about it, but try it on first, because that 36 millimeters, or 35 millimeters actually, may be something which doesn't sit right with your wrist size. And my final con is something which, well, it's not really a con, because you know what you're getting into when you buy this watch. But it is very expensive. This watch costs £5,150 at retail price from the authorised dealer, all right? I think that's really expensive for a relatively small, simple, time-only watch, right? It doesn't do anything. It only tells you the time. There's not even a date complication here. There is no precious metal involved in the production of this watch. It is a simple piece. £5,150 is a lot of money. You can buy pretty much anything in the field watch category out there for less money than that. But what can I say? Rolex holds its money. In fact, these watches on the grey market change hands for something like £7,000 these days. So you can't really argue about an expensive item which is worth more immediately after you've bought it. You could make money out of it. But I think it is an expensive piece. But of course, that is relative, within this category that we're talking about. Let me sum up my observations on this watch in one simple paragraph. And I think it's best if I say it like this. Since I purchased this watch a little over 6 weeks ago, I've put all my other Rolex pieces and all my other watches in the safe. And do you know what? I have rarely got them out, because this watch has fulfilled all of my needs. Whether I'm up here in the woods, chilling in nature, I've just been chopping wood, just had a cup of tea off the stove in my hut, and this watch, a perfect companion. This evening, when I go home, I will put on my velvet smoking jacket, I'll pour myself a glass of sherry, I will sit at home with my wife, and this watch will be the perfect companion, because its ace in the sleeve is its ability to cross across the genres of one's clothing. It always seems the right watch to wear, and that is a worthy investment. So I'm very pleased that I've bought this little Explorer. It has certainly fulfilled a role in my watch collection which might actually make a few other pieces redundant. There we go. You take your chances when you buy these things, you never know how it's going to go, and this one is an absolute keeper. So I hope you've enjoyed this review video on the Rolex Explorer. If you have, I would encourage you to give us a thumbs up because it means I know you've enjoyed the video. Leave me a comment in the comment section below. Tell me your views on this watch, or if you own it too, let me know how you felt about it. If you would like to join us on our journey, click that red subscriber button and become part of the Chap's Guide community. And if you'd like to practically support the channel, go down into the description box where you will find a link to the Buy Me a Coffee website, and you can buy me a coffee. And I would be deeply grateful, and I would love to join you for a coffee. So, until the next time, take care of yourselves, wear your own watches with confidence, and I will see you again very soon.